This webinar is being recorded. By participating in this webinar, you agree that Angelique Robbins owns all rights to this recording, and you grant her permission to use your image and any written or spoken comments you choose to offer during the course of this webinar in any manner she chooses. Okay, so I'm going to give a brief intro because well, there was someone on the call that hadn't been on before. So, and people watch this on YouTube, and I want them to know what's going on too. So, just give you a brief intro. Hi, Heath. So, when I was 19 years old, I had a near-death experience, and while I was dying, I met this really massive swell of energy, and I understood that energy to be God. And what it said to me was that its name was Geschichte, and what I learned later was that it was the angelic realm who had met me as I was dying. And I had conversations telepathically with this energy for about 5 hours, and I didn't die. But I had said to this energy during that experience, you know, if you'll save my life, I will dedicate my life to whatever it is that's being asked of me. And so when I woke up, I had a very different view of my life. I was no longer interested in doing drugs. I was no longer interested in harming myself. And I really started changing my life dramatically. And over the course of the next 13 years, I was led to a certain type of study which focused on internal attention and emotional alchemy. And while I was learning about this emotional alchemy, I was also having a lot of mystical experiences and being able to really communicate with the energy of people in the same way that I was able to communicate with the angelic realm during that near-death experience. And over, you know, the course of that 13 years, I really became a different individual and really cultivated some unique gifts. When I was 34 years old, I got sick and almost died again. And when that experience happened, something within me, it was like some type of reality completely crashed. Probably it was my perception of myself that I had really been working with for that past 13 years, but it crashed. And I really felt like at least half of me just died. And to this day, I still feel that way. It's like the person I was, I don't even relate to anymore. But once that occurred, that huge energy that I had been in communication with, you know, for all those years, started moving into my body and speaking through me. And so Geschichte, the angelic realm, does move into my body now and speak through me, and that is who teaches these webinars. So I'm going to sing a song that they taught me when I was in my 20s. I'm 40 years old now. And once I'm done singing, Geschichte will be speaking to you guys about romance. This is going to be very interesting. Woohoo! I have no idea what they're going to say. And this is Keith. This is my significant other.
Hello.
That's my almost husband.
Yes, almost.
He's the father of our baby. Susan?
Hey.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm going to mute the rest of you that came on the call.
Just okay,
Huh?
you're good. Nothing.
Okay. So while I sing, just relax and enjoy the song. See you on the other side. Om Say Safa Safanata. Ooh, ooh, hey.
Save Menkam, Seiken. Save Menkam, Seiken. Ooh, save no. Ooh, forsake. Save Menkam, Seiken. Hey, for no day. Hey, for no day. Come for day. He come for day. Come for day. He come for day. Hey, for no day. For no day. For no. Tien Kien for Tien Kien Nyam 48. Nyam 48. Oh, for San Tien Kien.
Hello.
Hello.
Good to see all of you.
I'm gonna grab my water.
Okay. Very, very wonderful to see everyone today. The art of romance. Such a wonderful topic, isn't it?
Oh boy, here we go.
Such a wonderful topic. And yet, one of the most difficult things in your world, isn't it? How to make romance be successful. What does that mean for romance to be successful? We're going to give you what we think we means it, because it's interesting to watch humanity and the way that romance seems to fizzle within the first few months or the first few years of a relationship. We really want to explain to you guys our observation of why it fizzles and how you can keep it from fizzling. So, like everything that we explain, we're going to begin it from a strong foundation. In our opinion, the strong foundation of romance is respect. If respect, mutual respect, is not in place, then the romance will fail. It will not last. And what we notice is that so many relationships are not built on this foundation of respect. And because of that, the emotional injury begins to occur very, very early in the relationship. So if we were in your shoes, when we were in any sort of interest in another individual, the first question we would ask ourselves is, do I respect this person? And why? Why do I respect this person? And do I respect myself? And why do I respect myself? How do I respect myself? The reason that's an important question for you guys to ask is because what we notice is that so often the arguments in a relationship go kind of like this. You want someone to respect you, and you want someone to show certain courtesies toward you. But if you watch how you're treating the individual, often you are not even requiring yourself to offer these certain courtesies. And perhaps that's because you don't feel like you need to, or you feel entitled to something else. We notice a lot of entitlement in relationships. And so we would really include that in this understanding of respect, is to really search yourself out for what you feel entitled to. Because anything that you feel entitled to is going to kill your romance. Because all relationships, all love between two people, all successful relationships is built on the ability to contribute. So if two people can honestly contribute into a relationship, then those two people will be open to what the other one needs in terms of contribution, what the other one needs in terms of support. Okay? But if someone has an entitled standpoint, if someone has an entitled view of their place in a relationship, then automatically they're starting out in a place that is not going to be open to contribution. Okay? So respect, assessing your ability to notice what you have entitlement about. And this part gets difficult, this entitlement area, because we teach our students constantly about human entitlement. And what we notice is that for the most part, humans are really in a lot of resistance to noticing where they feel entitled. Okay? So we're going to just go off on a sidetrack just for a second. We've been working with Angel on this because she, like all humans, doesn't really notice where she's entitled. So we're drawing her attention to those areas. And one place that you can start to see your entitlement is in a place like doing taxes. Okay? If you're doing your taxes and you're noticing, oh, I'm really trying to get as much out of the government as I possibly can, then you have an entitlement issue in that area, okay? And we know that the argument would be, well, but they're robbing us. They're robbing us. But we would just consider all of those types of things justifications. And we're not disagreeing that you're not being robbed, but what we're saying is that it's in the energy itself of assessing where you can find these pockets of entitlement. So you can see that if you're justifying anything, there is some type of entitlement to address, okay? We notice it in your healthcare systems. People are entitled to get healthcare, yeah? once we talk to you about this, you're going to look out into your world and see what we're speaking about. Why? Why is everyone entitled to get health care? Think about this. There are all kinds of people whose job, meaning the way they raise their families, the way they make money in this world, their job is to help people become better, become well, become healed. So if you're entitled in that area, what you're saying to those people whose job it is to help you become well, you're saying to them, it's not really that important that you get paid for what you're doing, because what you're doing should be a free service. When you start to look at it this way, it's rather messed up. We also see it in the healing communities. Okay, so people like Angel and Keith who offer guidance and energy and all kinds of things to help people get better. And these two will often have people say to them, well, I can't afford that, or I just don't think I should have to pay that, or your prices are too expensive. And if that is what's going on in your mind when it comes to healers as well, you've got some entitlement going on. So what we're saying is that we notice that humans have entitlement in all kinds of different areas, okay? And if you'll start to look at it, you'll see how it bleeds into your romance. You'll see how it bleeds into the way that you're treating those closest to you in your life. And nothing can kill a relationship faster than entitlement. Right now, it's a huge sweeping thing in your world to look at narcissistic behaviors, yes? And what is narcissistic behavior? What is it about? What does it feel like? Narcissistic behavior is entitled. It is a space of take. And that's why it's sweeping relationships, this word, narcissism, is because people are realizing, oh my gosh, when you're in a relationship with someone who's entitled, literally nothing can occur that is healthy because you don't have a teammate. You don't have someone who's interested in your well-being in the same way that you're interested in their well-being. Okay? So this is what we consider contribution. This is what we consider respect, is to offer someone your heartfelt contribution, and for that person to offer you their heartfelt contribution, and for you to work together with that as teammates. What are you working toward in a romance? In our opinion, what you're working toward is greater and greater harmony as you get to know someone. Greater and greater joy as you get to know someone. So now think about romance and the way it usually goes in your world and ask yourself, does it fit with that description? Some relationship, yes, some relationships do fit within that description. But most relationships do not. They seem to get worse with time, don't they? People become crotchety toward each other. They become more critical of each other. The way they treated each other in the beginning, where it was, oh, let me show you how interesting you are, and let me show you how interesting I am, and let me show you the best side of myself, starts to crumble, doesn't it? And then two people seem to only be showing each other the worst sides of themselves. How does this occur? Why does this occur? In our opinion, this occurs because, number one, the respect was not there in the first place, and the respect was not focused upon in the first place. Number two, two people are finding it difficult to be vulnerable with themselves and with each other. And within vulnerability is also honesty. So if you have issues with honesty, we really, really, really encourage you to watch our last webinar, which was The Art of Honesty. Because the art of honesty absolutely really relates to this subject. Because also romance cannot develop or flower without honesty. Because what honesty does is it feeds vulnerability, okay? So when two people feel like they can be honest with each other, it helps them open up more. It helps them trust each other more. And of course, trust is absolutely necessary in a romantic relationship. And if there is not trust that's established, then the relationship will crumble. So now consider that people will start out hot and heavy in the beginning of a romance before they've established respect, before they've established trust, before they've established honesty, before they've established vulnerability. Yeah? And often people will become sexually involved with each other before establishing any of these. Now, we're going to tell you that being humans, when you allow sexuality to come before all of those things, you really set yourself up for problems. Because sexuality is the greatest vulnerability. In sex, you are opening yourself up to everything with that other person. You're opening yourself up to, number one, all of the physiological functions, all of the juices, all of the things that really makes you a human being. You're sharing it with another human being. Okay, so there's that element of it. Well, the same thing is happening on an energetic level. Mm-hmm. On an energetic level, you're opening yourself up to everything about that human being. Okay, so if you're having sexual relationships with someone before you even know them enough to know, do I respect you? Do I want to be vulnerable with you? Do I want to contribute to you? Do I want you to contribute to me? You're setting yourself up for disaster because you're putting the cart way before the horse. Whoa. Way before the horse. Okay? So, in our opinion, the best way to cultivate a romantic relationship is to cultivate respect, cultivate trust, cultivate vulnerability within yourself, and foster that person being able to cultivate their vulnerability with you. Because one of the things that you guys have so much trouble with is this concept of vulnerability, yeah? Because in your lives, you have so many people who are not able to take care of your vulnerability. Usually it begins with your parents. And so you learn to put up walls. Okay? And the thing is that because everyone learns to put up walls, all of those on the other side of that, meaning those who are experiencing the person through the walls, don't know how to take care of that person who has the walls put up. Okay? So you guys are walking around without experience of how to really take someone's best interests as your own. All right? And that's what happens when you have a lot of feelings being hurt. It's really what it is more than anything is a space of immaturity between two people, that they haven't had enough experience, haven't had enough people in their life allow them to practice how to take care of someone else's needs. Okay, do you understand what we're saying by that? So let's say you're going up in a household and your mother, okay, your mother has a very difficult time being vulnerable. Your mother has walls up all the time. Well, then as a child, you're not trained how to take care of your mother's needs because you're not able to see what they are, okay? And so what happens when you're not trained to take care of someone else's needs is you become thin and kind of brittle and rigid in that area, only focusing on your own needs. Because you weren't brought up in an environment where there was a teaching about how to take care of everyone's needs at the same time. This is harmony. So you guys are almost all starting out at a disadvantage in this area. So when you begin romantic relationships, what you really need to keep in mind is, okay, for the most part, I'm untrained in how to take care of somebody else's needs. This makes it that much more important for us to have a lot of honesty with each other. And we can do our best to be very gentle in our honesty, But I'm not going to learn how to take care of your needs if I don't know what they are. And you're not going to learn how to take care of my needs if you don't know what they are. So we really must learn to be honest, respectful in our honesty, gentle in our honesty, and open and vulnerable with each other so that we can learn how to support each other, how to take care of each other in a way that lifts us both up. And another thing that we consider to be very important in regard to romantic relationships, and something that we see overlooked all the time, is what are the main values of your life? What do you really want to do with your life? Do you know what that is? Because if you've got someone, we're going to use Angel as an example. She is, from the time she was 19 years old, really even before that, very interested in self-development, very interested in becoming the best version of herself, very interested in energy, very interested in how to become the strongest version of herself, willing to undergo all kinds of pain to become it, very interested in being honest. Right? These are really strong desires for her life. If she matches herself up with someone who doesn't have those same interests, which she did, then how is that going to go? If you're matched up with someone who's really not interested in honesty, who's really not interested in becoming the best version of themselves, who's really not interested in taking the world as part of themselves, then are you going to have a good match between those two? Are those two going to thrive together? They're not going to. They're not going to thrive together because their trajectory is very different. The way they handle each situation of every single day, the way they handle their own thoughts is so different that as time goes on and as each of them practice their own ways of being, they're going to become further and further apart. Because their goals for life, their interests in life, their interest in self-accountability is different, very different. So at the beginning of any relationship, if you can assess what's really important to you, what do you want to accomplish with your life? If you meet someone and you're attracted to that person physically, but you get into conversations with them and you're watching their behavior and you're noticing, wow, the things that are super important to me, like honesty or really diving into my thoughts and getting to the core of issues, or really stretching myself to contribute even when it's difficult, if I notice that those things aren't important to you, then I have to be honest about the fact that I don't see how we're going to be very compatible long term. Okay? We notice that this is one of the biggest things that happens in your guys' world, okay? You ignore this part of it. You get into relationships because you're afraid to be alone. That's a big one. You get into relationships because you're just really attracted to someone. They're cute. They're pretty. They're rich. They're successful. Wrong reasons. When you get into a relationship with someone, the main reason should be compatibility, deep compatibility. The main reason should be there is something within that person that lights a fire in you, that amplifies all of these innate desires that you have, that inspires you to go even deeper into them, to move forward with them. You guys really need to find people who inspire you. That's what you should be in romantic relationships with those who inspire you. You should not be in romantic relationships with those that you have to take care of in an unhealthy way. And when we see this a lot, especially in because the people that are drawn to us are people that are interested in the same types of things that Angel's interested in. One thing that we notice is that you guys often have this desire to take care of people. And it's a dysfunctional desire. It's not functioning yet. It's a martyr complex. I need to save someone. There couldn't be a worse reason to get into a relationship with someone. You can be that person's therapist. You can even be that person's friend. But to be in a romantic relationship with someone that you're interested in saving is a terrible idea. Terrible. So on this note, we want to know if you guys have any questions, because we would really like to take your questions and expand upon them so that you can have greater understanding maybe in confused areas of your life. Furthermore, any question that any of you ask will relate to everyone else on the call. So if any of you have a question, raise your hand. No? Do you have a question, Keith?
I'm formulating.
We actually want to ask Keith a question.
Oh boy, here we go.
This is Keith. Both Angel and Keith have been married before. They have now been together for about 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we want to know, what are the main differences that you had from your first relationship, main relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and now this relationship? And how do they relate to the things that we've said? Do you find the things that we've said to be true?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing is probably just really straightforward honesty. That's probably the most noticeable thing. And with that, it's honesty with couched in respect, because you can be honest and destroy a relationship.
That's true too.
So it's honesty with respect. And so when you're respectful, you're delivering it from a place, and you're being honest, that I love this person and I want to communicate something for this relationship to be better. That's the whole meaning behind the reason why you're giving this honest input.
That's true.
And because you can be really honest in a relationship that you're very dissatisfied with, and you can absolutely shred somebody with no intention of making anything more harmonious. And so I really think that's a big part of it. It's really crucial to what came up for me lately in a class, as you well know, because you guys brought it up, was the idea of gentleness. And so for me, the idea of gentle just means what I just said, though, is do I care for this person so much that I want to always, everything that's out of my mouth, this is the idea. I'm not saying I practice this with we're close to flawlessly, but every word of my mouth, if it's to feed the relationship so that it can grow, then there's probably not a better thing I can do whenever I'm in a relationship. Mm-hmm. I mean, if I could keep that in mind, that would be very helpful. And so I need to go back and listen to this part over and over again so I can keep it firmly in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Laura Cruz has got a comment there.
Mm-hmm. So Laura says, honesty is sometimes hard when you are young and not confident in yourself. You have a hard time being
Mm-hmm.
honest with yourself. Yeah, that's very true, Laura. Yeah. And that's why we consider honesty to be the foundation of everything. We really teach based on that concept, because you cannot improve anything, you cannot correct anything, you cannot understand anything without honesty. Every bit of alchemy is completely off limits if there's not honesty. So ultimately, it's really important to know how to be honest with yourself, to know how to be present with yourself enough to evaluate yourself before even getting into romantic relationships. Because if that is a skill that has not even begun to be cultivated, it is very likely that the relationship won't end well. Because two people who do not have the ability to have self-reflection do not have the ability to communicate. Because what's going to happen? Everything's going to be the other person's fault. You're not doing this. You're not doing this. You're not doing this. So when there's no self-reflection or no self-accountability or no honesty with self, it's impossible to correct or improve anything. Okay, and so this goes for if you have one person in the relationship who is able to have self-reflection and another person in the relationship who's not able to have self-reflection, then you also have a problem. Because it takes two. It takes two people, both people, to have this type of honesty with themselves, to then be able to share it with others. And it takes the ability to have this kind of insight to be able to be honest about what's going on with the other person as well. Because in a relationship, often the other person is not going to see something they're doing that might be causing harm to the relationship, which means that the other person in the relationship is going to need to address it. Hey, I don't think that you're seeing what you're doing when you're doing this kind of thing. And the way it's making me feel is unappreciated. Oh, I didn't realize that. I apologize. I'm going to look into that. And so you need two people willing to have conversations like that. So you need two people willing to have self-accountability. Now, what we see happen a lot, what we counsel a lot, and we will say it's more women than men that we counsel in this way. What happens is many women get into relationships with men. The women are willing to be accountable for themselves. The men are not. And what happens is the women are trying, they've got this idea that, well, if I can do enough to compensate, then I can heal the whole relationship by myself. And they literally think this way. Oh, I guess I'm not doing enough because the relationship is still failing. And often what we have to say to these women is, okay, you're in here to see us. You're diving into your stuff in here, and you definitely have some stuff, but where is your partner? Because the best work's going to be done if we can see you both at the same time so that we can help you learn how to communicate with each other. My partner doesn't want to go to counseling. Well, how good is your partner at his own self-reflection? He doesn't really do that, but he's a good man. He's a good man. We hear that a lot.
That's what's prefaced. You know you're in trouble when he's a really good guy. But
it's a
like,
problem.
here it comes.
Because what does that even mean? What does being a good person even mean?
It's different for each person what that definition is.
Extremely nebulous. So anyway, what we notice is that, especially in this spiritual movement of self-accountability, which is a wonderful thing, it's as though there's a belief in there that through your own deep accountability, you can transform any relationship. And the thing is that that's not true. You can transform yourself within any relationship with deep accountability, no doubt. But you cannot transform another person with your own deep accountability. You can't. That's up to them. So if you're not matched with someone who's as interested in being accountable as you are, then guess who's going to get the blame for a lot of the stuff? You are. You are. Because you're the one willing to be accountable. And people who don't want to be accountable love to blame the ones that do, because they want them to do the work for them. Okay? So you have to be able to assess when that's occurring also. You have to be able to go, okay, I have dived into myself so deeply. I have unturned all of these stones. Okay? I've got 15 stones in my hands, and I can tell you about each one of them. I can tell you about my dysfunction in each one of these areas. What about you? What have you got? I want to know what you found. Well, I haven't found anything. then there's the problem. So it's really important to be aware when that's occurring, okay? Because we notice that many of you stay in relationships for way too long doing this exact thing. And sometimes it can nearly kill you. Drains all of your energy. More questions?
Can we go? Oh, go ahead.
Sana.
So you also talked about vulnerability. So how could you allow yourself to be more vulnerable in a relationship when, for example, what you mentioned before, there wasn't very common in your upbringing?
Well, number one, Sana, we would really practice being vulnerable with ourselves, okay? So the reason that we would practice being vulnerable with ourselves first is because what it does is it starts teaching you to not be so afraid of the vulnerability. When you can look at your own darkness and your own light and just start to see it clearly, start to really see who you are clearly and get to know yourself, then you're in a much stronger position to be able to offer that same vulnerability to someone else, because you're more aware of what you're offering, okay? And so a lot of times people are afraid to offer themselves because they don't know what they're offering. They haven't evaluated it within themselves first. And the second reason is they're really afraid that with that vulnerability, they're going to get hurt even more. That if they open themselves up that much, that it's going to create such a clear line into the person's emotional states, such a clear access, easy access to those emotional states, that it will be damaging. But if you are interested in someone and that one is showing you gentleness and tenderness, and they're showing you their desire to be vulnerable with you as well, then we consider it's a very useful risk to take. And there's really no way we can say to you that, oh, it's always going to be safe. It's always going to feel safe. It's almost never going to feel safe to be vulnerable until you've established so much trust with someone based on honesty that you really, really, really are feeling embraced by that person. That takes a while to cultivate. So at the beginning, we would say just be willing, pick wisely, number one. Pick wisely who you're wanting to take the risk with based on everything else we've said. And then when you make the decision, okay, you're worth the risk. I'm going to practice vulnerability with you because you're worth the risk to me. And then really make an effort to be vulnerable so that that person can get to know you, can really come to know who you are. Because when that person gets to know you, really gets to know who you are, then they have the ability to make a solid choice based on what you're offering them, right? Instead of some strange projection. And what happens a lot is that people are choosing each other based on that projection that they're sticking out there. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, that ends up crumbling because the projection is only a tiny percentage of who you are. And the more you spend time with someone, the more you get to know someone, the more you see all of that other stuff that's existing behind the projection. So it's actually intelligent for you guys to drop the walls and to be vulnerable with each other so that you can see what's going on behind that projected curtain, so that you can make an honest choice with each other of if you want to actually be with each other. Now, in the same breath, it's important to keep an eye on the way someone else is vulnerable with you, okay? If the way someone else is vulnerable with you is that they're always seeking your sympathy or they're always seeking your pity, then that is a giant red flag about a specific type of projection, okay, that will show itself over time and be very damaging. So if we were in that situation where we were seeing that every time they were getting, quote, vulnerable with us, what they were showing us was all of the ways that they need attention, they need sympathy, or they need taken care of. We would really keep an eye on the way that energy felt, because the way that energy will feel is like someone's sucking from you. And if you have that dysfunction in there that wants to take care of someone, then that's a dynamic you can be pulled into easily. Okay? So you want to make sure that the vulnerability is, how do we say that? Spanning a large range of different facets of a person's being. Okay? So you want that vulnerability to be honest across the board. Meaning, if someone's willing to show you vulnerability in the way where they need your sympathy, and yet is not able to admit when they're angry, but their energy is very angry energy, then it shows a serious dysfunction in their real ability to be vulnerable. It shows that there's a doorway that only allows that person to be vulnerable in order to seek attention through sympathy or pity. Okay? And the reason we're actually exploring this concept right here is because for those of you in the healing fields, this is actually a kind of danger zone for you. And so we want you to really be able to pay attention to someone's ability to emit and be real about what they're emitting. Okay, that's, if we could sum up vulnerability in one sentence, that's how we would say it. Vulnerability is the ability to emit and be honest about what you're emitting. So if someone is you probably have all known someone who can do this, emit anger and say, I'm not angry. That's not vulnerability. Okay, so we want you to be able to assess when that's occurring. Because when that's occurring, it's a red flag. All right. Did that answer your question, Sana?
Yes, it did answer my question. Thank you.
Does anyone else have questions? So once all of that deep stuff right there is established, guys, then we would really focus on how to have fun together in deep ways. We would really focus on how to lift each other up. We would really focus on how to show each person that they're important. We would focus on the development of the relationship. And we would focus on it daily. We would have an idea in mind always of, I want the relationship to feel like this. Notice we're saying feel. I want the relationship to feel like harmony. I want the relationship to feel fun. I want the relationship to feel joyful. I want the relationship to feel connected. I want the relationship to feel tender. I want the relationship to feel passionate. Okay, we would establish the different feelings that we really wanted. We would do this on a daily basis. And after establishing the feelings that we want, we would contribute to those feelings. And we would contribute to those feelings with ourselves and with our partner. If you want to really heighten the passion within your relationship, then it's probably important to touch your significant other. Yeah? If you want to really heighten the feelings of joy within the relationship, then it's probably really important to keep the complaining to a minimum. If you really want to heighten the feelings of connection in a relationship, then it's important that you're contributing presence often in a day. Do you see what we're saying? Establish, understand what you want, and then contribute to what you want. And always require your own contribution before you require theirs. This is how you keep yourself accountable. We're not saying to not require theirs. We're just saying require it of yourself as well. Do you have anything to add, Keith?
So when you're talking about when they make you feel something, how do you draw the line with the idea that nobody makes you feel anything? It's totally up to you on how you take something and what you do with it, to them having accountability for not being kind, not being respectful. I mean, did I just answer my own question right there? Or is my question so muddy that you don't know what it is?
Why don't you give an example?
Well, if your significant other says something, and a third party looking at it would probably go, I didn't really see much of a charge about it. Most people wouldn't see a charge, but you feel that it's charged, and so then you take it to make you feel hurt by it. And anybody else looking at it would go, that wasn't hurtful. What are you talking about? Maybe that's time for me to look. I don't have that kind of a feedback automatically, of course, from what's happening. But if I sit there and go, well, is that really just me having a soft spot because of past things I've got that have made me tender, and I'm taking that the wrong way? So you didn't make me feel anything. I'm taking it to mean a certain thing, and therefore I'm making it feel painful and hurtful. I mean, where do you find that? How do you find that line? How do you measure that? Whether it's actually you and your tender spot that you need to tend to, or the other person's actually, making you feel something. Does that make sense?
It's a good question, because it happens a lot, doesn't it? Well, you made me feel this way. This is why self-awareness is so important, guys, because of this type of topic right here. When you have two people who are self-aware, this type of conversation can get worked out pretty easily. Wouldn't you say?
Yes, I think so.
Can't you and Angel work this type of thing out easily?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, neither one of you is going, you made me feel this way. So
no.
That's one clue. If you're in a relationship and somebody's saying, you're making me feel this way, right, that's blame, number one. And number two, it's pointing to a lack of self-awareness, okay? Because it is true, nobody's making you feel a certain way, but someone else is contributing to how you're feeling, okay?
True.
So you have all of these filters put in place, and why self-awareness is really important. And someone can say something to you, and the way it makes it through your filters is when it's said that way, I receive it as, I'm fat. I'm going to say this from a girl's point of view.
That was what I was going to say.
You're making me feel fat.
These jeans make my butt look big.
Well, in that scenario, if we were the loving partner of someone who had that type of lack of self-awareness going on, we would say, well, I'm very sorry that the way I said that made you feel fat. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. What I'm trying to say is, I think that you have other outfits which really bring out your figure in a much more sexy way. I think that you have a gorgeous figure, and I like the way that and that and that looks, because it accentuates this and this and this. So we would just be gentle in those areas as much as we could. We would be gentle but still honest. And then we would also address, if you're really sensitive in this area, and I've already assessed within me, I truly don't think you're fat. I think you're beautiful. So what I'm noticing is that you have some deep wounds in this area. I don't know where they came from, but it's really hard to talk to you about anything in this area because of these deep wounds. So I think it's important that you start to address those deep wounds in there. And I will be even more careful with how I word things. And please, on your part, start addressing those deep wounds.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand what we're saying?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty balanced way of approaching it. I mean, you're going to probably diffuse most potentially explosive issues and areas with that type of approach. Yeah, and the more you get to know each other, again, that's also if you're coming from a place of not assuming that the other person is out to hurt you.
True.
If you're coming from a place of, well, I got to be on guard because I never know when so-and-so is going to take a stab and a jab at me. If that's really the underlying background that you've got going on, then the other person is going to say things that you're going to find more hurtful because that's your expectation. But you never know when they're going to do it. But now we're back to the idea of respect and being kind to someone that you say that you care for.
Mm-hmm.
And that sets the stage for everything. I mean, it really does. I remember when Angel and I were in counseling, we were dating. And I mean, we actually weren't even like officially dating. You know, it was called kind of, you know, getting to know each other. And so the counseling was to help prepare the stage, the foundation for the relationship to have a good launch pad. And the first thing that was brought, we were asked, both of us, well, now what's the most important thing, you know, in a relationship? And I think Angel and I both probably gave some good answers, but they weren't the answer that the therapist was looking for. And so she goes, it's respect. The foundation for the relationship is respect. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then she goes, what was missing from your last relationship, Keith? I was like, that respect, totally missing. And then, so the platform that all the communication was coming from was really from a place of a lack of respect and kindness. Well, is it any wonder that it didn't work out? You know, that's just foundational, let alone your trajectory in life that you guys were mentioning earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You know, are you both head in the same direction? But you don't know that if you can't be vulnerable because you haven't been able to share your own heart's desires for your life. How do you know?
Yeah. So in a nutshell, guys, just be really honest with yourselves about what is compatible and what isn't, okay? And be really honest with yourselves about the reason that you start a relationship and the reason that you stay in one. And if you're finding that the reason that you start one or stay in one is not within the realm of what we've discussed today, then it's time to really reevaluate it. All right? Because none of you are meant to be unhappy and unsatisfied in your relationships. You're meant to find someone who can harmonize with you and who you can create joy with, who you can create more passion with. The passion and the trust, the excitement, the fun, it's meant to keep expanding. That's what it's meant to do. That's what romance is meant to be. It's meant to be a continual expansion of what you started with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So by the end of your life, if you've truly found the love of your life, by the end of your life, your relationship should be 1,000-fold what it was when you started with that person.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in a relationship and if you've been in a relationship for 10 years and it's a crap hole compared to where it was when you started, then it needs reevaluated. Okay? Because remember this, guys, if one of you is unhappy, both of you are unhappy. All right? We've never seen a relationship where one of the people was happy and the other one was unhappy.
No matter what they claim.
You're always feeding off of each other. Now, we have seen where one person claims to be happy and the other one is unhappy, but the one who claims to be happy is just in a state of denial. We've seen that. But as far as two people truly one being unhappy and one being happy, I've never seen it. And we watch our earth every day. So really assess where you are when you began. Assess where you are now, if you're anyone listening to this trying to rekindle romance. And ask yourself if all the things that we've addressed today are being addressed in your relationship. Are they being cultivated in your relationship? And is the person you're with interested in addressing and cultivating these things with you? If you're not in a relationship yet, if we were in your shoes, we would listen to this webinar at least 5 times. And we would take notes on it. And we would really ask ourselves a lot of these questions that we've asked you guys so that you can understand yourself better. Because the better you understand yourself, the more honest your contribution will be in any relationship. The more honest your contribution in a relationship, the better the chances are that that relationship will be highly successful in terms of joy, respect, vulnerability, and harmony. Okay? Are there any other questions? We see some in the chat here. Oh. I heard a great question once posed as an example of effective self-inquiry. What do I know that I'm afraid to admit? Yeah, that's a great question. What do I know that I'm afraid to admit? Sure. That's a great question to ask yourself every day, just for success in life, period. Okay. Thank you all for attending. We hope that you enjoyed it. And hopefully we'll see you next time, okay? Bye, everyone.